We're all at different stages. Some of us have been walking with Jesus for decades, and some of us have been walking with Jesus for weeks, and some of us are still kind of way out. What would it mean? What would it look like to make an intentional decision to walk with Jesus? That he's changing us. And he's trying to conform us to this new kingdom that is right here that sees everything differently. One night, a man named Nicodemus came to just visit Jesus. And he was really perplexed. Now, Nicodemus was a scholar, a Jewish scholar. He was part of what we call the Jewish Sanhedrin, the ruling council. And while most of the ruling council was really angry at Jesus and was really going to go after him, even we read again and again, plotting to kill him, there were some who weren't. There were some who were just so taken by him, they wanted to know more. They were hungry for this. And Nicodemus was one of those. He wasn't trying to disprove Jesus. He was trying to understand Jesus so badly. And he comes to him at night, and he says to him, he says, Rabbi, which was a great term of respect, Rabbi, I know that you're from God because of the things you've done. And before he could finish his speech, before he could say one more thing, Jesus said this to him. He said, I assure you that unless someone is born again, it's not possible to see God's kingdom. Okay, now let me tell you the way I heard that verse as I grew up. Because I was taught that the kingdom is just something in the future. I read that verse and I heard him say, Nicodemus, if you don't get born again, you're not going to heaven. That's not what Jesus was saying there. Jesus isn't even talking about that there. He's talking about something totally different. He's saying, Nicodemus, I know you're trying to figure out what I'm saying. And you can't even understand this kingdom until you're willing to change. And I'm not just talking about change one or two things, until you're willing to come in and let me change everything in the way you see the world and the way you see yourself and the way you see God. See, Nicodemus didn't say you can't go to the kingdom of heaven. He said, unless you're born again, you can't see the kingdom. He's saying, Nicodemus, I'm here. Jesus is standing there. The king has come. I'm standing 6 feet from you, and you can't see me. You can't see me because you're trying to understand me by the values of this world. Now, I believe that we need to make an intentional decision to follow Jesus. But Jesus is talking about something here with Nicodemus. This isn't just a one point in time, not just a prayer you repeat and say, now I'm born again. He's talking about a new birth. Before I was born, I was living in a very comfortable place inside my mother's womb. It was warm and cozy and had everything I needed. I never even had to ask for anything to eat. I had all the nourishment I needed. It was comfortable. I could hear muffled sounds on the outside, my mom's voice, my dad's voice, some of the stuff like that. But the main sound I heard was the beating of her heart and the blood rushing through her veins. It was really a perfect existence, but there came a time when it got a little uncomfortable and things were starting to happen and people were talking louder and louder and it got really confusing. It got really weird, man, and I'm having a really hard time, and then all of a sudden, everything is real bright. I mean, I didn't even open my eyes and I couldn't see. It was so bright. People were talking and there was all this noise and everything, and people were touching me with latex gloves and first week Mom took me to church, they were touching me with cold hands, but there was all this stuff going on, and my mom was still there, and when they laid me on her breast, I could still hear her heart beat, and I could still hear her voice, and she still gave me nourishment, but it came in a different way, a totally different way, and sometimes I had to ask for it. I had to scream at her, you know? And then the change kept going and going and going. And it hasn't stopped. See, Jesus wasn't saying to Nicodemus, you say a prayer and you're born again and then you'll go to heaven. He's not even talking about that. He's saying, Nicodemus, if you could just see the kingdom of God, if you could just see what I'm talking about. And Nicodemus, gets all literal on him and says, What, could I enter my mother's womb again? And Jesus says, flesh gives birth to flesh, the spirit gives birth to spirit. And then he uses the word enter. Don't be surprised that I say you need to be born again as you enter into this kingdom with me in the here and now and in the life to come. And Nicodemus, he's been trying to get this through his head. And at one point, Jesus said, Nicodemus, you're a teacher, you're a theologian of all these people, and you don't get it? Of course you don't, because you don't get the kingdom this way. You get the kingdom this way. How? What did Jesus say to his disciples? He said, hey, you, follow me, walk with me, learn from me, watch me, give yourself to me. And over this time, we keep learning and learning what this kingdom is. Friends, I want to tell you that living in the kingdom is this journey that we take, and the new birth is a journey we take. We're all at different stages. Some of us have been walking with Jesus for decades, and some of us have been walking with Jesus for weeks, and some of us are still kind of way out. What would it mean? What would it look like to make an intentional decision to walk with Jesus? But he's changing us. He's changing us. And he's trying to conform us to this new kingdom that is right here that sees everything differently. I've been on this journey a long time, and I have so far to go. So far to go. I'm still trying to work through, and I have for decades trying to work through this thing of if you lose your life, you'll gain it. What does that mean for Phil Stout in this day? I don't have a good authoritative answer, but some days I see it more than others. And some events happen in my life where I see it more than others. It's this journey. And I think for us to experience this new kingdom that Jesus is talking about, I think there's just a couple things that we need to embrace. One is a teachable spirit. A lot of us have been taught that when you become a Christian, here's all the answers. We'll give you all the answers, and then you have it. And they began to worship certainty, but a teachable spirit. I got to tell you, I have been changing for decades now. One of the things I'm very thankful for is that when I was a young pastor, just starting out, there was no social media. So there's no sermons of mine from back then out there. And I'm glad, because I think back at some of the stuff I preached, and I thought, are you kidding me? Those poor people who had to listen to me, I'm trying to learn. I've been in this church for a couple years now, and I've learned so much from Pastor Corey and from Josh and Carrie and Amy and Aaron and Kiki and Carrie and y'all. I've learned so much. It's this thing that if we can be teachable. And then the other thing it takes for every one of us, and this is something that's not a great commodity in our culture, humility. See, the kingdoms of this world don't think that's a high value. They think strength is the value, and Jesus said humility is the value. And when we're humble, then we're teachable. And when we're teachable, we're humble, and then God can do what he wants to do with us. I hope I'm a different person in 5 years than I am now. I hope I'm a different person in 20 years than I am from now. I love this quote from the great saint from the 2nd century, St. Ignatius. If you grew up in Roman Catholicism, you heard that name a lot, St. Ignatius from the 2nd century. And I think this is done toward the closing parts of his life. So he was talking about the kingdom here and the kingdom to come. But I love the quote. He said, I am in the throes of being born again. It's not complete in me. I'm in the throes of being born again. And I read that quote a few years ago, and I said, yeah, that's me. That's me. I'm still trying to get my eyes accustomed to the brightness. I'm in the throes of being born again. Jesus is calling us to this new kingdom. And this new kingdom does not come in the way the kingdoms of this world come. Does not come through force, does not come through fear, does not come through intimidation, does not come through the greatest power and the most money. None of those things have anything to do with the way the kingdom of God comes in our lives and through our lives into this world. But the kingdom of God, Jesus says, is advancing through us if we are able, like Nicodemus, to say, I don't understand. You're going to have to help me. And we go on this journey.